The betrayal. The morning sun cast long shadows across the gleaming hull of the diplomatic vessel Excalibur as ground crews completed their final checks. Ambassador David Jones stood at the observation deck, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he watched Earth's atmosphere fade into the velvet black of space. At 58, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had spent decades in navigating the treacherous waters of interstellar diplomacy. Final systems check complete, Ambassador, Lieutenant Sarah Chen's voice crackled through the comm, "We're ready for FTL jump on your command." David closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of humanity's future pressing down on his shoulders. The last 3 months had been a diplomatic nightmare following the Empire's accidental assault on human colonies in the Arcturus sector. 2,000 dead, they'd claimed it was a training exercise gone wrong, a misunderstanding. Now, after weeks of careful negotiation, the Empire had finally agreed to peace talks. Commander Harris, head of security, appeared at David's side. The man's massive frame seemed almost too large for his formal diplomatic attire, but his presence was reassuring. "Sir, I've completed the security briefing with the team. Something doesn't feel right about this." David turned to face his old friend, noting the concern etched in Harris's features. They'd served together for 15 years, through countless diplomatic missions, and Harris's instincts were rarely wrong. "Share your thoughts, Commander." The Empire's sudden willingness to negotiate after months of stonewalling. The location, their home planet instead of neutral ground. The timing, just as our fleet modernization program is reaching completion. Harris's jaw tightened. "It feels like a trap." "Of course it's a trap," David replied quietly, surprising Harris. "The question is, what kind of trap, and how do we turn it to our advantage?" Before Harris could respond, Lieutenant Darrell Reyes burst onto the observation deck, his young face flushed with excitement. "Ambassador. We've received the final diplomatic protocols from the Empire. They're unusual." David accepted the datapad, scanning its contents with practiced efficiency. His expression remained neutral, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "They want us to come completely unarmed. Not even ceremonial weapons." "Sir, that's suicide," Harris protested. "Standard diplomatic procedure allows for a security detail with personal sidearms. This is completely unprecedented." David handed the datapad back to Reyes. "What's unprecedented is an empire that's dominated galaxy for 3 centuries suddenly feeling threatened enough by humanity to massacre our colonies." He turned back to the viewport, watching as the last hints of Earth disappeared behind them. "They're afraid of us, gentlemen. That's what makes this so dangerous, and so important." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of preparation and tactical briefings. David spent most of it in his quarters, reviewing everything known about Empire psychology and social structures. The aliens' biology was silicon-based, their civilization ancient and rigid. They valued ceremony and hierarchy above all else, and their concept of honor was absolute, though very different from human understanding. As they approached Gorin, the Empire's capital world, David gathered his team in the ship's conference room. 8 people sat around the table, himself, Harris, Reyes, and 5 other security specialists chosen for their diplomatic experience as much as their combat skills. "I want to be clear about something," David began, his voice carrying the weight of command. "What we're about to do is probably the most dangerous diplomatic mission in human history. The Empire has never invited a species to their homeworld for negotiations. Ever." He activated the holographic display, showing the landing zone they'd been assigned. "They're either about to offer us something unprecedented, or they're planning to make an example of us. Either way, we represent humanity today. Whatever happens in that chamber will set the course for our species' future." "Sir," one of the security specialists, Rodriguez, spoke up. "If things go south, we won't have any weapons." David smiled slightly. "That's where you're wrong. We'll have the most powerful weapon humanity has ever developed, the truth. Everything that happens today will be recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. The Empire knows this. They're counting on it. He stood, straightening his jacket. If they want to talk peace, we'll give them every chance to prove their sincerity. If they want to make an example of us. His eyes hardened. Then we'll show the galaxy exactly who they're dealing with. The descent through Goran's atmosphere was tense. The planet's surface was a masterpiece of engineering, vast cities of crystalline towers stretched to the horizon, connected by streams of flying vehicles that moved with perfect precision. But beneath the beauty lay an undercurrent of menace. Defense platforms orbited overhead, their weapons capable of vaporizing ships far larger than the Excalibur. As they approached the landing pad, David activated his neural recorder, a microscopic device embedded at the base of his skull that would transmit everything he saw and heard back to the ship, and from there to Earth. Standard procedure for diplomatic missions, but today it felt more like insurance. The landing pad itself was a marvel of alien architecture, surrounded by towering spires that seemed to defy gravity. A delegation of Empire officials waited below, their tall, sinuous forms arranged in perfect geometric patterns. At their center stood High Chancellor Vra, the Empire's supreme leader. "Remember," David said quietly as they prepared to disembark. "Whatever happens, maintain your dignity. We're not here as supplicants or servants. We're here as equals." The moment the ramp lowered, David felt the weight of history settling around them. The air carried a sharp, mineral scent, alien and slightly caustic. Empire guards lined their path, their organic armor rippling like liquid metal. Their weapons might have been ceremonial, but David knew better. One shot from those plasma lances could vaporize a human instantly. Vra stepped forward, his elongated face arranged in what passed for a diplomatic smile among his species. For jet-black eyes regarded David with calculating intelligence. Ambassador Jones, the alien's voice was surprisingly melodious, though it carried undertones that made human teeth ache. "You honor us with your presence." David bowed slightly, exactly the proper degree for equals meeting in formal circumstances. "Chancellor. The honor is mutual. Humanity looks forward to resolving our misunderstandings." He caught the slight twitch in Vra's upper eyes at the word misunderstandings. "Good. Let them know that humanity hadn't forgotten or forgiven the massacre." This was diplomacy, after all, every word carried weight. As they were led into the vast imperial hall, David's trained eye caught countless details. The way the guards positioned themselves, subtly cutting off escape routes. The cameras hidden in ornamental fixtures, recording every angle. The slight tension in Vra's movements, suggesting either anticipation or anxiety. The hall itself was a testament to Empire power. Soaring columns of black stone rose into darkness above, while the floor was polished to mirror brightness. Their footsteps echoed ominously, and David noticed how the acoustics were designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. They were led to a circular chamber where alien delegates sat in tiered rows, looking down like spectators in an arena. Vra took his place on an elevated platform, leaving David and his team standing in the center, exposed from all sides. "Ambassador," Vra's voice carried effortlessly in the designed acoustics. "Before we begin formal negotiations, there is a matter of ceremony to address." David felt Harris tense behind him. This wasn't in the protocol they'd been sent. "Of course, Chancellor. Though I was under the impression we had already exchanged the traditional greetings. This is something more significant." Vra's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "A test, you might say, of humanity's commitment to peace." The chamber doors sealed with an ominous hiss. David heard the subtle click of weapons being readied, though he couldn't see them. In that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that Harris had been right. This was a trap, but not the kind they'd expected. A test? David kept his voice steady, betraying none of the adrenaline now coursing through his system. Or an execution. VRI's facade of diplomacy cracked slightly, revealing something ancient and cold beneath. That, Ambassador Jones, depends entirely on how well humanity learns its lesson today. The first plasma lance fired without warning, striking Rodriguez in the back. The security specialist didn't even have time to scream before he was reduced to ash. Chaos erupted as Empire guards emerged from hidden panels, their weapons humming with deadly energy. Harris moved with shocking speed for his size, putting himself between David and the nearest attackers. "Sir, get down," he shouted, just before a plasma burst caught him in the chest, burning through flesh and bone. David stood his ground, even as his team fought and died around him. He kept his eyes locked on VRI, his voice carrying over the carnage. "Is this how the Empire makes peace? Through treachery and murder? Peace?" VRI's laugh was like breaking glass. "There can be no peace between order and chaos, Ambassador. Humanity is a disease spreading through the galaxy. Today, we begin the cure." As plasma fire filled the air and his people fell one by one, David activated his neural transmitter's emergency protocols. Everything happening in this chamber was being broadcast not just to his ship, but to every communication hub in human space. The Empire had wanted to make an example of them, but not the kind they'd intended. The last thing David saw before a stun blast took him down was VRI's face, twisted with alien satisfaction. The Chancellor didn't realize it yet, but he'd just made the biggest mistake in his species' history. The Empire had shown its true face to the galaxy, and humanity would never forget. As darkness claimed him, David's last thought was of Earth, and the storm that was about to be unleashed. The Empire thought they were teaching humanity a lesson about power. Instead, they were about to learn one about consequences. The price of peace, it seemed, would be paid in blood. The response. President Elias Gray stood in Earth Central Command, his hands gripping the edge of the holographic display table as he watched the transmission from Gorin play out for the third time. Around him, military commanders and civilian leaders maintained a horrified silence as they witnessed Ambassador Jones and his team being brutally ambushed. "Play it again," Gray ordered, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Focus on the background details this time." As the scene unfolded once more, General Sarah Martinez stepped forward, her weathered face grim. "Sir, we've confirmed the transmission's authenticity. Ambassador Jones's neural recorder was broadcasting until approximately 3 hours ago. The last transmission showed him being moved to what appears to be some kind of ceremonial execution chamber." Gray straightened, his tall frame casting a shadow across the tactical display. At 62, he'd led humanity through first contact, trade negotiations, and the early stages of interstellar colonization. But nothing had prepared him for this level of betrayal. "Options," he said simply, looking around the room. Admiral Chen, commander of the Solar Fleet, activated a different holographic display. "We have 27 battle groups ready for immediate deployment. The new Hyperion-class carriers have completed their trials, and the Prometheus weapons system is operational, though untested in combat. The Empire will expect a military response," Director Williams of Intelligence interjected. "Their forces outnumber ours significantly, but they've never faced human tactical doctrine. Our simulations suggest." "Forget the simulations," Gray cut him off. "They just murdered our diplomatic team in front of the entire galaxy. This isn't about tactics anymore. This is about sending a message." He turned to face the assembled leaders, his eyes hard. "The Empire thinks they understand humanity. They think we're young, weak, divided. They believe this display of force will cow us into submission." A bitter smile crossed his face. "They don't understand what they've just done." "Sir," Martinez spoke up. "The Empire's broadcast is still running. They're planning to execute Ambassador Jones publicly in 6 hours." Gray's jaw tightened. "Then we have 5 hours to show them exactly who they're dealing with. Admiral Chen, initiate Operation Thunderbolt." General Martinez, your Marines have been itching for a real fight, they're about to get one. Director Williams, activate all our sleeper agents in Empire space. It's time to see if those decades of infiltration were worth the investment. The room erupted into controlled chaos as orders were relayed and battle plans set in motion. Gray turned back to the holographic display, watching as fleet icons began moving into position throughout human space. One more thing, he added, his voice cutting through the noise. Get me a direct channel to every human colony and settlement. It's time to remind our people who we are. Across human space, screens flickered to life. In homes, offices, and public squares, millions paused to watch as their president addressed them. Gray stood straight, his expression resolute. Citizens of Earth and her colonies, he began, 3 hours ago, the Galactic Empire revealed its true nature to the galaxy. In an act of unprecedented treachery, they murdered our diplomatic team and took Ambassador David Jones prisoner. They intend to execute him publicly, believing this will teach humanity its place in their ordered galaxy. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. They are gravely mistaken. Throughout our history, humanity has faced countless challenges. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own destructive nature. We've reached for the stars not because it was easy, but because it was hard. And now, when an alien empire thinks to teach us submission through fear, we will teach them something about human nature. Across Mars, mining colonies ground to a halt as workers gathered around screens. On Luna, research teams paused their experiments to listen. In the asteroid belt, miners and engineers watched with clenched fists. I am hereby announcing the implementation of the Phoenix Protocol. All civilian ships are to return to the nearest fortified port. Military reserves are activated effective immediately. And to our enemies watching this broadcast, you have 6 hours to release Ambassador Jones and his team. After that, humanity will show you exactly why your ancestors should have left us alone. The broadcast ended, but its effect rippled through human space like a shock wave. On military bases, soldiers rushed to battle stations. In shipyards, crews scrambled to prepare vessels for combat. And in countless homes, families huddled together, wondering what war with the galaxy's greatest power would mean. But in Earth's Central Command, Gray was already moving to the next phase. Show me the Prometheus deployment options, he ordered. Admiral Chen brought up a new tactical display. The system is ready, sir. But we've never tested it against Empire shields. The energy requirements alone will be worth it when they see what it can do, Gray finished. Position the platforms here, here, and here. He pointed to key strategic locations around Empire space. When the time comes, I want them to understand that humanity's peace offering wasn't weakness, it was mercy. In orbit above Mars, the massive form of the UES Hyperion cast a shadow over the red planet. Captain Helena Rodriguez stood on her bridge, watching as her crew prepared for humanity's first major interstellar war. All weapons systems online, her tactical officer reported. Prometheus link established. Shield generators at maximum capacity. Rodriguez nodded, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Hyperion was humanity's newest weapon, a ship built not just for war, but for a very specific kind of war. One that would show the Empire that their technological advantage wasn't as absolute as they believed. Status of the assault teams, she asked. Marines are ready, Captain. Operation Thunderbolt is loaded into their neural networks. They're eager. Rodriguez allowed herself a grim smile. The Empire thought they were dealing with primitive savages. They were about to learn that humanity's apparent technological gap was carefully crafted misdirection. For decades, Earth had been preparing for this possibility, developing weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter Empire technology. Send word to all ships in the battle group, she ordered. The moment we receive the execute order, I want every vessel ready to jump. The Empire wants to make an example of humanity. Let's give them something to remember. Meanwhile, in the depths of Empire space, carefully planted human agents began their work. Communications relays mysteriously failed. Navigation buoys transmitted incorrect data. Defense platforms suffered unexpected power fluctuations. Small things, easily dismissed as technical glitches, until they all happened at once. Back on Earth, Gray watched as the pieces fell into place. The Empire had spent centuries believing their technology made them invincible. They'd never faced an enemy who'd spent decades studying their weaknesses, preparing countermeasures, and waiting for the right moment. Sir, Martinez approached with a new update. The Empire is broadcasting again. They're moving up the execution. They must suspect something's coming. Gray's expression hardened. How long? 2 hours. They're already beginning the ceremony. Then we move now. Gray turned to Admiral Chen. Initiate Thunderbolt. All ships, all. Then we move now. Gray turned to Admiral Chen. Initiate Thunderbolt. All ships, all units. The Empire wants to play their hand early. Let's show them ours. Across human space, battle groups surged into action. The Hyperion-class carriers, humanity's newest and most powerful warships, engaged their jump drives in perfect synchronization. To observers, it would have looked like chaos, vessels jumping seemingly at random, with no apparent pattern or strategy. But there was a pattern. A deadly dance choreographed through years of preparation. In her command chair, Captain Rodriguez watched as her tactical display lit up with jump coordinates. All hands, battle stations. Initiate jump sequence on my mark. She paused, allowing herself one final breath. For Earth. For Ambassador Jones. Mark. The Hyperion vanished in a flash of quantum displacement, followed by its entire battle group. Across human space, hundreds of ships performed the same maneuver, each jumping to precisely calculated positions around Empire space. The Empire's first warning came from their outer defense networks. Alarms blared as human ships appeared simultaneously at dozens of key strategic points. But when they tried to relay these warnings to Central Command, their communications networks failed mysteriously. In the execution chamber on Gorin, VRI was just beginning his ceremonial speech when an aide rushed in, face contorted with panic. The Chancellor paused, annoyed at the interruption of his moment of triumph. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Multiple human vessels, my lord. They're everywhere. And our defense networks are acting strangely. We've lost contact with the outer systems." VRI's upper eyes narrowed. Impossible. Their fleet couldn't have organized so quickly. And our defenses? He was cut off by a deafening boom that shook the entire chamber. Above them, through the transparent dome of the execution arena, the sky had come alive with light. Human ships hung in low orbit, their hulls gleaming in Gorin's sun. David Jones, still bound but standing proud, allowed himself a small smile. "You should have studied your history more carefully, Chancellor. Humanity doesn't break. We adapt." Before VRI could respond, every screen in the chamber flickered to life. President Gray's face appeared, his expression cold as steel. "Chancellor VRI. You sought to teach humanity a lesson about power. Allow us to return the favor. Look to your skies. Your orbital defenses are already compromised. Your communication networks are failing. And what you see above you is just the beginning." The chamber erupted in chaos as Empire officials realized the truth. Their impregnable defenses, their superior technology, all had been carefully studied, analyzed, and countered. While they'd been playing at diplomacy, humanity had been preparing for war. "One chance, Chancellor," Gray continued. "Release Ambassador Jones and his surviving team members immediately, and we can still avoid what comes next." Refuse, and learn why every species that ever tried to subjugate humanity has failed. VRI's face contorted with rage. You dare threaten the Empire? Your ships will be dust before they can fire a single shot. Our technology is impressive, Gray cut him off. But technology isn't everything. Sometimes, the most dangerous weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know you have. Admiral Chen, you may proceed with the demonstration. High above Gorin, the Hyperion's Prometheus system activated. A beam of pure energy, unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, lanced down from the ship. It struck one of Gorin's defensive platforms, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the platform simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not exploded, it ceased to exist at a quantum level, along with everything within a kilometer radius. The chamber fell silent. VRI stared at the empty space where one of his most powerful defensive installations had been, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. That, Gray said quietly, was one ship, using one weapon, at minimal power. We have hundreds of ships in position around your key worlds, Chancellor. Each carrying similar surprises. The next demonstration will not be aimed at an unmanned platform. David straightened, despite his bonds. The choice is yours, Chancellor. Peace, as equals, or learn just how creative humans can be when we're truly threatened. For the first time in its long history, the Empire faced a choice it had never encountered before: submit to demands, or face an enemy who had spent years preparing specifically to defeat them. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see which path they would choose. Thunder and shadow. VRI's response came not in words, but in action. With a gesture barely perceptible to human eyes, he gave a signal. Throughout the execution chamber, hidden weapon ports began to open. So be it, David Jones said quietly, already knowing what would come next. He straightened his spine, prepared to die with dignity, but death didn't come. Instead, every weapon port sparked and died, their power systems failing simultaneously. Through the chamber's massive windows, more of Gorin's defense platforms were winking out, their lights fading to darkness. Impossible. VRI's composure shattered as reports flooded in. Our systems are impregnable. Our technology was studied, analyzed, and compromised decades ago. David cut him off. Did you really think humanity survived this long by chance? Every trade deal, every diplomatic mission, every seemingly primitive human ship that visited your worlds, all gathering data, planting dormant code, preparing for this moment. In orbit, the battle was unfolding with surgical precision. Captain Rodriguez watched from the Hyperion's bridge as Operation Thunderbolt entered its second phase. The Empire's much-vaunted defense grid was falling apart, its automated systems turning against each other or simply shutting down. Status report, she commanded. Phase 2 proceeding as planned, Captain, her tactical officer responded. Sleeper viruses are active in 87% of Empire defense networks. Their ships are launching, but their targeting systems are compromised. They're essentially flying blind. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Begin Phase 3. And get me a direct link to Ambassador Jones's neural transmitter. Let's make sure the galaxy sees what happens next. On Earth, President Gray watched as the carefully orchestrated plan unfolded. Decades of preparation, billions in resources, countless lives spent infiltrating the Empire, all for this moment. Sir, General Martinez approached with a new update. The Empire's outer colonies are reporting widespread system failures. Their quantum communication network is collapsing. They're being forced to use standard subspace channels, exactly as planned. Gray allowed himself a thin smile. Execute Phase 3. Let's show them why humanity's apparent technological gap was a carefully crafted illusion. Across Empire space, human ships began deploying their full arsenal. The Prometheus weapons were just the beginning. Quantum disruptors, temporal shields, gravity lances, technology the Empire had never seen before, had never even imagined possible. In the execution chamber, David watched as VRI's world crumbled around him. The Chancellor's 4 eyes darted from screen to screen, watching as centuries of Empire dominance unraveled in minutes. How? VRI demanded, his voice cracking. Your species is barely space-capable. Your ships, your technology. Were exactly what we wanted you to see, David replied calmly. While you were busy looking down on us, treating us like primitive savages, we were studying you. Learning your weaknesses. Preparing. Above them, the space battle had become a slaughter. Empire ships, their targeting systems compromised, were firing blindly into space. Human vessels, their true capabilities finally unveiled, moved with impossible precision. The Hyperion alone had disabled 12 Empire capital ships without destroying a single one. Captain Rodriguez's tactical officer called out, Empire ships are attempting to jump to hyperspace. Should we prevent them? Rodriguez considered for a moment. No. Let them run. Let them spread the word of what happens when you underestimate humanity. On the ground, the situation was equally one-sided. Empire ground forces found their advanced weapons refusing to fire, their combat suits locking up, their communications filled with static. Years of hidden backdoors and sleeper programs, planted by patient human operatives, were activating simultaneously. In Earth's Central Command, Gray watched as the Empire's supposedly invincible military machine collapsed under the weight of human preparation and ingenuity. Sir, Martinez reported, we're receiving surrender signals from 3 Empire colony worlds. Their defensive systems are completely compromised. They're requesting immediate cessation of hostilities. Gray nodded. Accept their surrender. But maintain battle readiness. The Empire's core worlds won't give up so easily. He was right. Even as their outer defenses crumbled, the Empire's elite forces were rallying. On Gorin, VRI had recovered some of his composure, his alien features settling into a mask of cold determination. You think technology alone will save you, the Chancellor hissed. The Empire has faced threats before. We have contingencies you cannot imagine. As if on cue, new ships began emerging from hidden docks beneath Gorin's surface. Different from the standard Empire vessels, these were darker, more organic in appearance. Ancient weapons, preserved from wars fought before humanity had mastered fire. David felt a chill as he recognized them from classified intelligence reports. The Empire's Omega fleet, ships rumored to use technology so advanced it bordered on supernatural. Weapons that could tear apart reality itself. Did you think we would keep all our forces in plain sight? VRI's confidence was returning. The Empire has ruled for millennia because we are always prepared. Always. He was cut off by a new voice, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the Humanity Defense Initiative. Chancellor, I was wondering when you'd deploy the Omega fleet. We've been waiting to test our countermeasures. VRI's face went slack with shock as new human ships decloaked around his precious Omega fleet. Vessels that hadn't existed an hour ago, their hulls gleaming with technology that shouldn't have been possible. You see, Chancellor, David said quietly, while you were watching our military, counting our ships, measuring our apparent technology level, you missed something crucial. You missed our scientists, our researchers, our dreamers. For every weapon you had hidden away, we developed 3 countermeasures. For every secret technology, we found 4 ways to defeat it. The Omega fleet opened fire with weapons that distorted spacetime itself. Reality rippled and bent, but the human ships remained untouched, protected by shields that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Impossible, VRI whispered. These defenses, this technology, you couldn't have developed this. We would have known. Would you? David asked. You were so convinced of your superiority that you never considered we might be hiding our true capabilities. Every time you scanned our worlds, you saw exactly what we wanted you to see. Every piece of technology we shared was carefully chosen to reinforce your assumptions about our limitations. The battle in orbit had become something out of legend. The Omega Fleet's reality-warping weapons clashed with human quantum shields and temporal disruptors. Space itself seemed to crack and heal as the two forces engaged in combat that defied conventional physics. But even here, humanity's preparation proved decisive. The Omega Fleet, for all its terrifying power, was fighting blind. Its command systems had been compromised years ago, its weaknesses studied and catalogued by patient human operatives who had spent decades infiltrating the Empire's most secret facilities. One by one, the ancient ships began to fall. Not destroyed, humanity had learned long ago that destruction was often less effective than capture. Instead, they were systematically disabled, their crews trapped in temporal stasis fields, their reality-warping weapons rendered inert by targeted quantum disruption. In the execution chamber, VRI watched his last, best hope fade into nothing. His 4 eyes turned to David, seeing him, truly seeing him, for the first time. "What are you?" the Chancellor whispered. David smiled sadly. "We are humanity, Chancellor. We are the species that looked up at the stars and dreamed. We are the children who played with fire and learned not to fear being burned. We are the civilization that turned its own destructive nature into a force for creation." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And most importantly, we are the people who learn from every attempt to destroy us. You thought you were teaching us a lesson about power? You taught us something far more valuable, the importance of patience, preparation, and appearing weak until the perfect moment to be strong." Above them, the last of the Omega Fleet surrendered, its ancient weapons silenced by human ingenuity. The Empire's greatest secret weapon had been defeated not by brute force, but by careful planning and hidden strength. The galaxy would never be the same. Echoes of victory. The silence in the execution chamber was deafening. Through the transparent dome above, the last traces of battle were fading, disabled Empire ships drifting under human escort, their mighty weapons silenced. But VRI's eyes weren't on the spectacle above. They were fixed on a small holographic projection that had just appeared in the center of the room. "Chancellor," President Gray's voice carried an edge of steel beneath its diplomatic veneer. "I believe it's time we had a real conversation about the future of galactic civilization." VRI's upper eyes twitched, a sign of extreme stress in his species. You planned this. All of it. For how long?" "Since before we made first contact," David answered, his bonds falling away as hidden human agents finally revealed themselves among the Empire's honor guard. The Empire wasn't as subtle in its surveillance as it thought. "We detected your probe ships decades before you officially discovered us." The revelation hit VRI like a physical blow. Around the chamber, Empire officials were coming to the same stunning realization: their civilization's greatest advantage, its ability to study and evaluate potential threats before revealing itself, had been compromised from the very beginning. In orbit, Captain Rodriguez watched as her crews began the delicate process of securing Empire technology. The Hyperion's true purpose was finally clear: not just a warship, but a mobile command center for the most ambitious technological integration project in human history. "Status report," she commanded. "Empire quantum cores are being contained and stabilized," her chief engineer reported. "The integration protocols are working exactly as designed. Dr. Chen's theories were correct, their technology is compatible with our systems, just as our infiltration data suggested." Rodriguez nodded, allowing herself a moment of pride. Humanity hadn't just prepared for war, they prepared to win the peace that would follow. Every captured ship, every piece of Empire technology, had been studied and prepared for years in advance. Back on Earth, Gray was coordinating the next phase of the operation. Holographic displays showed human forces moving with precision across Empire space, not as conquerors, but as liberators. Decades of covert contact with subjugated species were paying off, rebellions and uprisings, carefully planned and coordinated, were breaking out across the Empire's territory. "Sir," General Martinez approached with new data, "the Arbiters are responding." Gray's expression tightened. The Arbiters, a mysterious species that had long served as the Empire's judges and peacekeepers. Their response would be crucial to what came next. In the execution chamber, David watched as VRI received the same news. The Chancellor's reaction was everything he'd hoped for, shock giving way to understanding, then to fear. "The Arbiters," VRI whispered. "You reached them too." "We reached everyone," David replied quietly. "Every species you subjugated, every civilization you thought you'd broken. We spent decades building connections, making promises, preparing for this moment. The Empire's greatest weakness wasn't its technology, Chancellor, it was its arrogance." Through the chamber's windows, new ships were appearing. Different from both human and Empire designs, they represented dozens of species, hundreds of civilizations. All had suffered under Empire rule, all had waited for this moment. "You see," David continued, "while you were watching our fleet movements, counting our ships, we were building something far more powerful than weapons. We were building alliances. Underground networks. Promises of freedom that we've now proven we can keep." VRI sank into his throne, his proud posture crumbling. "The Arbiters, they were supposed to be incorruptible. Our most loyal servants." "Loyal?" David laughed softly. "Chancellor, the Arbiters have been waiting for this moment for centuries. Why do you think they pushed so hard for diplomatic solutions all these years? They were buying time, helping us prepare." In orbit, the true scale of humanity's victory was becoming clear. It wasn't just military, it was cultural, political, technological. The Empire's carefully maintained web of control was unraveling, replaced by something new. Something unprecedented in galactic history. Captain Rodriguez watched as representatives from a dozen species began arriving on the Hyperion. Not refugees or suppliants, but allies coming to claim their place in whatever would follow the Empire's fall. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions from across Empire space. Colonial governors, military commanders, they're requesting terms of surrender." Rodriguez smiled. "Direct them to the Arbiters. It's time for the galaxy to see that humanity didn't come to replace the Empire. We came to end the very concept of Empire." On Earth, Gray was addressing an emergency session of the United Earth Government. The holographic chamber was packed with representatives from every human colony and settlement, all witnessing history in the making. "Today marks not just a victory," he declared, "but a transformation. The Empire thought to teach us our place in the galaxy. Instead, we will show them, show everyone, that the age of empires is over. The age of true cooperation, of genuine partnership between species, begins now." In the execution chamber, David watched as VRI's world continued to crumble. But there was no joy in his victory, no satisfaction in the Chancellor's defeat. Only a deep, quiet certainty that what would follow would be worth all the years of preparation, all the careful deception. "What happens now?" VRI asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Now." David gestured to the growing fleet of allied ships above. "Now we do what humanity does best. We adapt. We build. We turn enemies into partners. The Empire's technology, its resources, its knowledge, all of it will be shared, not hoarded. Used to lift up, not to oppress." But even as he spoke, warning signals began blaring across human ships. Deep beneath Goran's surface, something was stirring. Something the Empire had kept hidden from even the Arbiters. VRI's posture changed subtly, a flicker of his old confidence returning. "Perhaps," he said softly, "it is time to show you why the Empire's rule was necessary. Why some powers should remain, contained." David felt a chill as new readings appeared on his neural link. Whatever was awakening beneath the surface was unlike anything humanity had encountered or prepared for. The real test, it seemed, was just beginning. The price of victory, they were about to learn, might be higher than anyone had imagined. The final price. The ground beneath Goran's execution chamber began to tremble. Through the transparent dome, David watched as massive sections of the planet's surface split apart, revealing something that defied comprehension. A structure was rising, or perhaps awakening, its surface a shifting maze of impossible geometries and pulsing energies. You wanted to know why the Empire rules? Virai's voice carried a note of dark triumph. Behold the true reason for our dominion. The Guardian. On the Hyperion's bridge, Captain Rodriguez stared at readings that shouldn't have been possible. Get me Earth Command, now. And someone tell me what we're looking at. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice cut through the chaos, her tone grim. It's a quantum consciousness engine. We'd theorized they might exist, but this is beyond anything we imagined. It's not just a weapon, it's an artificial reality nexus. In Earth's Central Command, President Gray watched as new data poured in. The structure rising from Goran wasn't just massive, it was reality warping, its very existence challenging the fundamentals of physics. The Empire didn't rise to power through conquest alone, Virai continued, standing now with renewed purpose. We are the guardians of forces you cannot comprehend. Powers that would break lesser species. The galaxy kneels to us because the alternative is chaos beyond imagination. David's neural link was flooding him with data, much of it incomprehensible. But amid the stream of information, patterns began to emerge. You're not guarding against chaos, he said slowly, understanding dawning. You're containing something. Something ancient. Something that was here long before your empire. Virai's 4 eyes fixed on him with surprise. Perhaps you are not as primitive as we thought. Yes, Ambassador. The Guardian exists to prevent their return. The ones who came before. The ones who nearly destroyed reality itself in their war. Above them, the quantum consciousness engine was fully active now, its energies sending ripples through spacetime. Empire ships were backing away, their crews clearly familiar with what was coming. But the human fleet held position, their advanced shields adapting to each new distortion. Captain, Rodriguez's tactical officer called out, "We're detecting quantum entanglement on a massive scale. Whatever that thing is, it's connecting to similar structures across the galaxy." In that moment, David understood. The Empire's true purpose, hidden beneath millennia of corruption and tyranny, had been preservation. They weren't just conquerors, they were jailers, keeping something unimaginably dangerous locked away. The Empire united the galaxy through fear because we believed it was necessary, Virai said quietly. The Guardian Network is all that stands between this reality and the return of them. And now, in your ignorance, you have disrupted the very forces that maintain our universe's integrity. But even as he spoke, something unexpected was happening. The human fleet, rather than retreating from the quantum distortions, was moving into precise formations. Ships that had appeared to be simple warships were transforming, revealing layers of technology that even the Empire had never dreamed possible. Did you think, David asked softly, that in all our preparation, in all our studying of your empire, we wouldn't find traces of what you were containing? That we wouldn't prepare for this too? President Gray's voice rang through the chamber. Chancellor, humanity didn't come here to destroy the empire. We came to replace it with something better. Your Guardian Network is failing, not because of our attack, but because it was built on fear and control. There's a better way. Dr. Chen's image appeared alongside Gray's. The quantum consciousness engine doesn't need to contain through force. It can be transformed, adapted to work through cooperation rather than control. We've spent decades developing the technology to do exactly that. Virai stared in disbelief as human ships began interfacing with the Guardian Network. Rather than fighting its reality warping effects, they were working with them, stabilizing them, transforming them. Impossible, he whispered. The technology required, the understanding needed, was achieved through cooperation, not domination, David finished. While your empire hoarded knowledge, humanity shared it. Every species you subjugated had pieces of the puzzle. Together, we found a solution that your empire never could. The quantum consciousness engine's chaotic energies were settling into new patterns. Where before it had projected fear and domination, now it radiated something different: harmony, balance, cooperation. Sir, Rodriguez reported from the Hyperion, the transformation is spreading through the network. All readings are stabilizing. The containment is actually strengthening, but without the need for forced compliance. Across the galaxy, the effects were immediate and profound. Empire worlds felt the change as the oppressive psychic weight of the Guardian network lifted, replaced by a subtle symphony of connected consciousness. Not controlled, but united. Not dominated, but harmonized. You see, Chancellor, David said, watching as understanding dawned in VRI's 4 eyes, humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, or our preparation, or even our ability to fight. It's our ability to find better ways. To turn enemies into allies. To transform systems of control into networks of cooperation. The execution chamber, once a symbol of empire power, had become something else, a birthplace for a new galactic order. Representatives from dozens of species were arriving now, drawn by the changed energies of the Guardian network. Each had a piece of the knowledge needed to maintain this new balance. The price of peace, David continued, isn't submission to power. It's the wisdom to know when to fight, when to cooperate, and how to transform systems of oppression into foundations for harmony. VRI looked around at his transformed chamber, at the representatives of species his empire had subjugated, now standing as equals. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he'd never expected: hope. Perhaps, he said slowly, it is time for the empire to learn some lessons of its own. Above them, the quantum consciousness engine pulsed with new purpose, its energies no longer containing through force but connecting through understanding. The galaxy's greatest threat had become its greatest hope for unity. And on Earth, President Gray smiled as reports flooded in from across human space. The price of peace had been high: years of preparation, countless lives spent in secret resistance, resources beyond measure. But the reward was beyond imagination: a galaxy united not by fear, but by choice. Not by power, but by understanding. The age of empires was over. The age of true cooperation had begun. And humanity, the species that had seemed so young, so primitive, had shown the galaxy that the greatest power isn't in weapons or technology, but in the ability to imagine, and create, a better way. The price of peace had been paid. The real work of building something new could finally begin.